thank y'all for coming. It's great to be here. You know, we just came, and Congressman Massey and Roy, they were both with us in Iowa, and it got to negative 33 wind chill. So I'm enjoying the balmy temperatures here in New Hampshire. It's really, really good. My kids are 7, 5, and 3. They had Florida born and bred. They had never seen snow prior to about a month and a half ago. They saw their first snow in Iowa, but it wasn't a great snow. Then later that week in December, we were in New Hampshire. There was a lot of snow on the ground, so they got to build their first snowman here in New Hampshire. So we've got the pictures of all that, and they were like, "Daddy, we like the snow better than Florida." I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's so much fun to play." I'm like, "All right, well, maybe someday." And then they came back when we were in Iowa when it really had the really bad blizzard. We're outside. I'm like, "You guys want to do snowballs? Throw snowballs at your dad?" They're like, yeah, let's go. So we go out. They hit me with 1. They hit me with 2. Then they're like, "Daddy, it is too cold. We want to go inside." I'm like, "So you'd rather live in Florida than live in Iowa with negative 20? They're like, "Oh yeah, we want to be in Florida." So they had their fill. They did it, but I think you can see that, you know, a lot of Floridians don't come north in January. We got a lot of Northerners that come down to Florida at the same time. You know, it's interesting, some of the things you do on the campaign. So one of our trips in New Hampshire in the fall, we stopped in Boston on the way, and it was my wife, me, and just our 5-year-old son. Our girls didn't want to come on that trip. So I was like, you know what, we have some time. I'm going to take my son to Fenway Park. And so he's a big sports nut. So I started showing him YouTube videos before we did the trip of the Green Monster, all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is a historic park. This is something you'll always remember, all this. And so he kind of got it. He was excited. So we were getting ready to go. We pull in right by Fenway. And he's like, "Daddy, stop." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Listen, I want to see Fenway Park, but I am not a Red Sox fan. I'm a Marlins fan and a Rays fan." I'm like, don't worry. You know, because I was in New England for 7 years in school, and I was 100% Red Sox over the Yankees without question. And I was here in 04 when they reversed the curse, which is really exciting. So I was like, no worries. So we go in, he tours it, the Green Monster, all this other stuff. He's out on the field. We're just just enjoying the moment. And you don't know what kind of impression that makes on a 5-year-old. And so we did that. So this is probably in October. Fast forward to Christmas, Santa gets him baseball cards. And so he's opening up the packs of baseball cards, and he's looking through. And anytime there was a Marlin, he would put it in his special stack. And then when there was a Tampa Bay Rays player, he'd put it in his special stack. So he's just going doing that. And with no prompting from me or no discussions, when he came to Red Sox players, he was putting the Red Sox players in his special stack. And I think it's because the Fenway Park had an impression on him. So you very well may have an addition to Red Sox Nation all the way down in Tallahassee, Florida. We'll see what happens. Well, listen, you know, we had a little tussle in Iowa, and you know, people were saying, like, you know, unless you finish in the top 2, then no one has a chance to go on beyond that. And people like Nikki Haley's team was saying, well, they're definitely going to be second, all this other stuff. You got to be second to go on. And I finished second. Yeah. She didn't. I mean, that's just the reality. So, you know. So I don't know how they're going to spin that. And it's interesting. A lot of her voters were Democrats that came on the same. New Hampshire doesn't allow this, and I think you guys are right not to. But in Iowa, you can actually show up as a Democrat on the day of the caucus, switch your registration just for the caucus, and do it. So that was really what she was relying on, was getting Democrats to come vote for her. That obviously is not somebody that's going to be able to win a Republican nomination, much less, you know, against Donald Trump. So looking forward to this, it's okay. Donald Trump is a choice. He's focused on his issues and himself. Haley is a choice, but she's focused on the donors' issues. And she's running on an agenda of warmed-over corporatism. She cares more about Ukraine's border than she does about our own southern border here in the United States. She caves when it counts. You know, it's like I hear some of these people saying, like, oh, Haley's for school choice. And I think, wait a minute. She was governor of South Carolina for 6 years. Did she ever do school choice when she was in office? No. She caved to the teachers union. In Florida, we did the largest expansion of school choice in the history of the United States because I beat the teachers union. And that's the difference. Someone that's going to stand in there and fight for you versus somebody that's going to cave to the pressure. Think about Big Pharma. How many people have ever stood up to Big Pharma? We've done it time and time again in Florida. We banned the COVID vax mandate in Florida. No one has to choose between a jab and a job. You have a right to make that decision. We made sure we banned the COVID vaccine passports. You should not have to cough up your medical records just to go have a hamburger somewhere. And we made sure people weren't going to be discriminated against and could participate in society. Is there anybody in this crowd that honestly believes that somebody like Nikki Haley would stand up against Big Pharma? No. That's her base of support. She's going to cave to Big Pharma. And Donald Trump had an opportunity, to do something about some of this when he was president. Did he do anything to take on? No. He initiated a lot of the medical tyranny that we've had to deal with since COVID. He elevated Dr. Fauci to be the de facto president of the United States during COVID. Donald Trump and Anthony Fauci plunged our nation into a lockdown. We in Florida dragged the nation out of the lockdown, and we made sure that our state was free and open, and we set the standard for the entire United States of America. I think that was important. So looking forward, I believe that we need a reckoning for what happened during COVID. I think people like Fauci need to be held accountable. I think it goes from everything from the lockdowns to the school closures to the shots to the mandates, everything. We need accountability and we need the truth for. I'm the only one running that will deliver that. Donald Trump won't, Nikki Haley won't, Joe Biden won't. And oh, by the way, and I think you need it because if you don't do it, they're going to try to get away with it again. And we can never let this happen to our country ever again. And you can count on me as president to protect you from that. But, one of the things I think is odd is we basically have four candidates between the two major parties. You have Biden, you have me, you have Trump, and you have Haley. I'm the only one that's not running a basement campaign. They won't even debate on the WMUR debate. Every single time we've had a New Hampshire primary, you do a debate with WMUR, or at least do some debate in New Hampshire. Donald Trump won't debate. He's not willing to defend his record. And Nikki Haley won't debate because she's not willing to defend her record. What does that say about, and of course, Joe Biden, you can't get him out of the basement to do much of anything. He's totally ignoring New Hampshire and even changing the calendar because he knows he may not do as well here. So that's not leadership if you're not willing to show up and engage in that kind of basic political tradition. So I was all ready to do it tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. I thought it would have been useful, but they did not want to do it, and so they ended up canceling the debate. So there will be no debate between now and the New Hampshire primary, and there probably won't be any more debates for the rest of the entire election 2024, because what will happen is Trump's not going to do any debates in the primary, Haley's not going to do any debates in the primary, and then in the general, what are the chances that Joe Biden would agree to debate me? Probably close to zero. That's not going to happen. So we're basically in a situation where people are running basement campaigns, and Haley, I'm going to take your questions here in a minute. She will not do that anymore. Doesn't want to take voters' questions, doesn't want to take questions from the media. That's not leadership. That's not showing that you're confident in your record and your political standing. Thomas, I think, mentioned earlier about the importance of protecting Second Amendment rights. I'm the only candidate running that you can depend on to defend your Second Amendment rights. I've done it in Florida. I'll do it nationally. And when Donald Trump says that he wants to take people's guns first and then go do due process later, guys, that's not due process when they take your stuff before they do the process. That's totally contrary to our Constitution. Not only violating the Second Amendment, it violates the Fifth Amendment. They can't take your TV without due process of law. This is your property. And so for him to embrace that shows he's not dependable on the Second Amendment. And look, I don't think he can get elected in this country ultimately. And that's been my worry. That's one of the reasons why I decided to run. But say somehow I'm wrong, he gets in there. He'll be term limited, he'll be a lame duck. He's not going to need Second Amendment people anymore. And he's going to gravitate to the left on Second Amendment issues. And then, of course, when the rubber meets the road on any issue, including Second Amendment, Nikki Haley cuts and runs. So do not depend on her to defend your rights. She'll do it when it's popular, but the minute it's not popular, the minute she's going to have to take some incoming, she'll skedaddle and she won't be there standing for you. I fight for you, yes, when it's easy, but anyone can do that. I fight for you when it's hard. I fight for you when they're shooting the arrows, when they're going after you, because that's really what leadership is. I've got to be willing to take the incoming so you don't have to. So when the chips are down, when things are tough, you can always count on me to be in the trenches defending your rights and defending your livelihood. So take that to the bank. I'm the only one running that has delivered on 100% of his promises. How many politicians, they run, they say all these things during the campaign, and then they under-deliver. Sometimes they never deliver on their promises. I made promises, I made bold promises, and not only did I deliver on those promises, I over-delivered on those promises. That's what we need in the next president of the United States. Not someone that's just going to sloganeer. You don't get into office and just be a potted plant. You get in there and you deliver on the agenda that you're promising the American people. I'm also the only one running that has actually beaten the left and the Democrats on issue after issue after issue. We beat the teachers' unions on universal school choice. We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat Soros on crime. We beat Disney on protecting the innocence of our children and stopping the sexualization of the curriculum. We beat the Democrats on election integrity, and we have universal voter ID, a ban on ballot harvesting, and we count the votes and report the results on election night. Imagine that, that we do that, and that's important. And finally, we beat the left by banning China from purchasing land in the state of Florida. No farmland, no land near military base, none of it. So Republicans, we need to win again. And yes, win the election. And Chip mentioned in Florida, like we all have election track records. You can just look at that. And people cite these polls. Like I overperformed the polls in Florida by like 10 points. I mean, they said we were going to win. We won by 20 points, 1.5 million votes. Obviously, we performed much better in Florida than Trump did, and much better than Haley did when she was in South Carolina, which is one of the most Republican states in the country, and she's underperforming. So that's important. You can count on me to do that. But what's even more important is once you're in office, we can't just be there flying around. We got to win these big battles. So if we don't win these big battles, we're not going to reverse the trajectory of this country. And I'm not running for president to simply manage this country's decline. I want to reverse the decline. I want a new birth of freedom, and I want to usher in a revival of the American spirit. But that requires leadership, and leadership is not entertainment. Leadership is not showmanship. Leadership is solely about putting that vision out, delivering on that vision, and producing big results for the people that you represent. That's what I'll do. So I'm running in part because I've got 3 young kids, as I mentioned, first grade, kindergarten, pre-K 3, and I'm concerned about the future of this country, not just over the next 4 and 8 years, and we do need a 2-term president, not just a 1-termer, not just that, but what's going to happen beyond that. And I think that a strong change agent type president like me will not only be able to get things better over the next 8 years, we'll leave a legacy that will reverberate for a quarter century. And you got to think long term. You got to think about what America's going to look like, not just as my kids are growing up, but when they're grown and they're able to go out and make the most of their lives and pursue their dreams. So that's a big motivating factor for me. The other motivating factor is, we didn't just get here by accident. We are here living, in spite of all our problems, all the challenges, we're still sitting here living in the greatest country in the world. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened because people throughout the previous generations have stepped up and fought for freedom when it was threatened. Our founding fathers understood this. When Benjamin Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention after they created the Constitution, he was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? And his answer was, a republic if you can keep it. They understood that this stuff wasn't something that would just happen. Freedom needed to be cultivated. Freedom needed to be protected. I'm mindful of this every time I fly into Washington, D.C. occasionally you'll take a route going into Reagan Airport, which takes you parallel to the National Mall. Looking out that left side of the plane, you see the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Monument, the Reflecting Pond, other monuments, beautiful U.S. Capitol building perched on the hill, and you feel a sense of pride as an American because you're like, you know, those really symbolize the principles and ideals that make this country great. But after doing that trip a few times, and every time I go since, I've recognized that the best monuments in this country are not found out the left side of that plane on the National Mall. Because if you just look out the other side of the plane, you look over the Potomac River, you see a series of small, nondescript monuments orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me then, and I believe now, you can have the best Constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. These things do not run on autopilot. They require every generation of Americans to step up and defend freedom and sometimes put on a uniform, risk your life, and even give the last full measure of devotion of service to this country. Now, in this political season, we're not called upon to make sacrifices of that nature. But what we are called upon to do is to do justice to the sacrifices that have been made on our behalf. What we are called upon to do is to preserve what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. This is the fire that burned in Independence Hall in 1776 when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish a new nation conceived in liberty. It's a fire that burned at a cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when our nation's first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, pledged our nation to a new birth of freedom. It's a fire that burned on D-Day in 1944, when a merry band of brothers stormed the beaches of Normandy, defeated the Nazis, and preserved liberty throughout the world. It's a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall in 1987, when President Ronald Reagan stood in front of that wall and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," eventually leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This is our responsibility, to carry that torch and to preserve this sacred fire of liberty. It is not a responsibility I shy away from. It's a responsibility that I welcome. Because if not now, when? And if not us, who? So I'm asking for your support on Tuesday. This is going to be a long slog. It's all about accumulating the delegates. I can tell you this. If you support me, hopefully the weather will be pretty good. It was not good for the Iowa caucus. Hopefully the weather will be better. But whatever you have to do, if you take time out of your day on Tuesday to support me, I'll spend the next 8 years fighting for you as the next president of the United States. Thank you all. God bless you. Happy to take some questions. Oh, great question. So they asked about my views on whether we should impose a central bank digital currency in the United States of America. The answer to that question is, on day one as president, I take the idea of central bank digital currency, I tear it up, and I throw it in the trash can. It's done. Dead on arrival. You know, the thing about it, so central bank digital currency, it's like, okay, does everyone know? Have you guys all heard about it? It's kind of like something that's a little bit under the radar. But basically what they want to do, they want to get rid of cash. They want to go to a cashless society, no cryptocurrency, and just have a digital dollar tied to the central bank, the Fed, basically. And all your transactions will be used with this digital dollar. Now, why would they want to do that? Are they just trying to be nice to you? Is this just an act of benevolence? No, they understand that if that's how the economy functions, they're going to be able to have supervisory authority over your transactions, so you lose financial privacy, and they will ultimately be able to circumscribe your transactions. If you buy, quote, too much fuel in a week, oh, you're hurting global warming, so they'll stop it. If you buy, quote, too much ammunition, they will stop the purchase. And they're actually right now cavorting in Davos at this World Economic Forum. These are all the people that want to do that. And they're up there. These are elites, financial elites. And they are licking their chops to be able to do something like a central bank digital currency. Sometimes government does things that are like a wolf in sheep's clothing. It may appear benevolent, but under the surface, it's dangerous. That is actually not central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency is a wolf presenting itself as a wolf. They're coming after your freedom on this. Biden and Trump and Biden have both supported the idea of a central bank digital currency. It started under the Trump administration. Biden did the executive order. The Fed may try to do it unilaterally. January 20th, 2025, central bank digital currency will be put out to pasture once and for all when I'm president.
This is just a more efficient way of doing what they're already doing. Jim Jordan and I have uncovered that the FBI asked the Bank of America to go through all of their records and find everybody who purchased a gun anywhere in the United States who was also present on January 6th in Washington, D.C. That is not an investigation. That is a dragnet to turn regular Americans into suspects. And what is Trump's response to that? To build the FBI a spectacular new building in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, building the FBI a $1 billion plus headquarters in the middle of Washington, D.C., that is not exactly draining the swamp. That is deepening the swamp, and I will not stand for that. Yes?
Dale Fitzpatrick. Nikki Haley says that you're ignoring New Hampshire. This is my 5th event with you. Can you square that circle?
I can, but Nikki Haley is also somebody that wrote in her book that her inspiration for running for office was not Ronald Reagan, not Margaret Thatcher, but Hillary Clinton. And then she gave interviews where she was bragging about Hillary Clinton being the inspiration. And she wrote in her book that in many ways she's still a source of inspiration. But then when you ask about that, when you confront her with that, she says, I never said that. She says, you're lying, you're lying. And all you got to do is just go to the tape. She's there saying this. She tried to raise the gas tax in South Carolina. She says shit that never happened. And yet you show her on video where she's proposing raising the gas tax. On and on it goes. This is a politician who does not want to answer for her record. I'm proud of my record in Florida. I mean, we have, Thomas has this debt clock, the nation's debt clock. He created a little scoreboard like they have in New York City that shows our debt ringing up. I told him, make one for Florida because for us, it wouldn't be counting up, it would be counting down. Because we've paid off 25% of our state debt just since I've been governor. We've cut taxes tremendously. We've had, New York has millions fewer people than Florida now, yet our budget is half the size of theirs. Our number of state government workers per capita is the lowest in the United States of America. Cost per government worker, lowest in the United States of America. And yet, when people move from New York to Florida, what do they tell me? Oh my gosh, your roads are so much better. Your infrastructure is better. Your services are better. Your schools are better. So how are we able to do all this at half the footprint and half the cost? It's because so much of government is excessive. It's not something that's necessary. We're going to be able to shrink the federal government bureaucracy. I think you can shrink it in half and not miss a beat with this. And Florida shows an example of how to do it. I'm proud of the way we've managed that. Don't you want to have your taxes cut as surpluses, reducing debt, and have a small, limited government footprint? That's what all Republicans claim they want to stand for, and yet how many of them actually follow through on doing it? You as a parent in Florida have rights that are protected about educating and the upbringing of your kids. I had to fight Disney to ensure that they weren't putting transgenderism in elementary school curriculum. Disney fought me. Nikki Haley sided with Disney against the children and parents of the people of Florida. So there's a huge difference here, but I think her credibility is shot. And some of these videos that people have put out online where they're saying, I never said that, then showing her actually saying that, it just shows you that she's definitely not somebody that you can trust. She doesn't have those core convictions. And ultimately, what she's going to do, she's going to cave to the left, cave to the donors, and cave to media pressure. And that is not leadership. Yep.
Hey, thank you for being here, Governor. Question for you. I appreciate that you stand up for your convictions and your beliefs. And how do people who say, I don't believe the same as you, know that you will work with them if you disagree with them?
It's a great question. I think it's because there's a lot of things that happen under the sun. So you and I may disagree on an issue, and we'll fight over it. That's fine. But then next month there may be another issue, and maybe you and I agree. And you got to be able to put that disagreement on the previous issue aside to be able to work on the next issue. So my job is to maximize results. So not every issue is going to have the same coalition. You're going to have shifting coalitions. And there's things that I've done in Florida, doesn't get as much press, major initiatives that have gotten unanimous support in the legislature. Our conservation programs, our Everglades restoration, some of the things we've done in education with teacher pay increases, civics. We did a big financial literacy push in our schools. Some of the things we've done to support law enforcement. So on and on it goes. So I'm going to take strong stands. I'm going to say what I believe. But I also realize that my 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. And honestly, my 80% enemy can still be a 20% friend on those things. And you can work together on those. And I'm proud to do that. My job is to maximize the results. And I'll work with anyone that will be able to do that.
Governor, I just wanted to add one thing to that, and because I think it's important. So, Dean Phillips is running on the other side of the aisle, right, for the Democratic nomination. Well, Dean, I did a bill with him in Congress, and we got it passed almost unanimously to try to fix some of the stuff that was broken that Thomas talked about in the CARES Act. I've got a bill with Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat from Virginia, to ban stock trading among members of Congress. Because I don't think that members of Congress can profit in trading stocks while they're members of Congress. So there are a lot of ways where we can do those sorts of things. The governor made that happen with the legislature in Florida, right? We talked about the conservation efforts and so forth. But those things actually matter because you can find places where you can agree to advance the principles you want us to advance. But compare and contrast that with former Governor Nikki Haley, right? Who's up here, she's not showing up, she's not debating. But her record and her track record was one of capitulating to the corporate lobby and the corporate establishment, right? After she was in office, what does she do? She gets on the board of Boeing, and instead of making sure bolts are in 737s and windows aren't blowing out of the planes, they're getting corporate stock buybacks. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's what you all want to see. And instead of making sure, for example, when she was the ambassador to the United Nations, of making sure that we were getting out of spending money, the money going to Hamas, that money kept flowing to Hamas and kept flowing through the United Nations to our enemies. There are things that we can do to fight for you. That's what the governor's done in Florida. He's done it with Democrats to get it done. Thomas and I work on bipartisan basis, but to advance the principles you want us to advance, not to capitulate.
Yeah, and I think on the stock stuff's important. So I was a U.S. congressman for 3 terms. I recovered from that experience, don't worry. But before I took office, I sold the stocks, and since I've been in elected office, I've never made an individual stock trade. Because it's like, you have like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she could be like the best hedge fund manager in the world with these returns. It's like, how is this happening? Why are these members of Congress so good at this? They're certainly not good about handling our budget, and yet they're making a killing. So you should have a moratorium. Put it in a trust. Don't be there making individual trades. I think they clearly abuse the powers a lot of times. The other thing is, with respect to that, I'm going to go in and be a strong leader. We'll be a change agent. We'll get a lot done. But the reason why we have such bad results out of Washington is because the incentives are skewed. You're getting the results that is being incentivized with the current structures. How do you change it? And this will take a lot of work. We'll work with the states to do this under Article 5 of the Constitution. But we need term limits for members of Congress. We need a balanced budget requirement in the U.S. Constitution. We need a line item veto for the President of the United States so that you can veto individual. I vetoed 3% of the budget one year in Florida, $3.3 billion with the line item veto. Your tax dollars right now goes to do things like promote transgenderism in Bangladesh. Is that really a good use of your tax dollars? You want a president to be able to hack all that out. And then we also have to make sure that people in Washington are servants of the people, not rulers over the people. So I've always been in favor of a 28th Amendment to the Constitution, which says very simply, Congress shall make no law respecting the citizens of the United States that does not also apply to members of Congress themselves. Yes, ma'am.
I'll do her than you. Yep.
Governor, we're here today. My wife and 2 young kids, 8 and 3, and our daughter Elodie, and we're as a young family very focused on education. And your record in Florida has been incredible. We're proud of that. So our daughter Elodie actually came today with a question for you: what do you do as president? I don't want to yell at.
Yeah, here, we'll get a mic for you.
As president, what would your choice be for school choice?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. Well, put the microphone back. Do you have any recommendations? What would you like to see?
I don't know.
You don't know?
What would you like to see? You tell us the way. Ellie, we have a homeschool hero today. My wife's here.
Oh, good. Nice. Well, listen, I think it's a great question. And yes, we are going to do school choice. And here's how we're going to do it. Now, Florida, we have universal school choice. In Florida, so I grew up in Dunedin, Florida, which is on the west coast of Florida. And so I went to Dunedin High School. That was just the reality. Now, you could go there if you grow up where I grew up, but you also have choices within your school district because choice has taken hold even amongst the public schools. You can also go to a charter school, which is a public school that's not run by the school district or controlled by teacher unions, and there's a bunch of charter options there. Or you can get a scholarship to go to private school. So every family in Florida has those options, and what's ended up happening is our performance academically is dramatically better than what it was 20 years ago. Nikki Haley, she did not do school choice in South Carolina, and when she left office, U.S. News and World Report ranked South Carolina dead last in education, 50 out of 50. U.S. News and World Report, under me as governor of Florida, Florida ranks #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report. So this is just getting things done, empowering parents to do. Now, federally, we're not going to necessarily be able to do all that we've done in Florida, but what we can do is a corporate tax credit scholarship program. We used to have that as our primary choice option in Florida. Now I've expanded a lot. But basically, corporate income tax, businesses can write off a certain amount. It goes to a scholarship fund. You have a group that administers it, and then eligible families can apply and get scholarships. We did 100,000 kids in Florida for $1 billion a year between administrative costs and scholarships. So if you just did $25 billion, which is nothing, you would be able to do probably 2.5 million kids under that all across the United States. And look, Florida, we will get it done. I mean, I beat the teachers' unions on all these fights, so we can win. But Chicago and Philly and some of these places, these kids have no chance. They have no opportunities. The school systems are politicized and controlled by the school unions. And so this will be coming over the top of that, giving scholarships. It's going to help a lot of low-income, a lot of working-class families. And I think it's going to help us get education back on a better track in this country. Because if we don't improve education nationwide, we're in trouble. And not just K-12. These universities and the indoctrination needs to stop. Universities should be about the pursuit of truth. It should be about academic rigor and integrity. It should be about preparing students to be citizens of our republic. That is the purpose of universities. And if they're going to make common cause with terrorist groups like Hamas, I'm cutting off their federal funding. This is ridiculous. Say it.
My first question is, can you beat Joe Biden?
Of course. Yes.
Is it okay to pray to saints?
Is it okay to pray to saints versus, well, I mean, the different traditions do different things. I mean, what I try to say is, I'm not out here beating my chest saying that God's on my side. I just try to conduct myself in a way so that I'm on his side. And that's what it is. And it goes back to our country being based on our rights coming from God. So, good deal. Yes.
What do I tell my sister? Her friend, a librarian in an elementary school in Florida, had to remove a Dr. Seuss book from the library, so she's not going to vote for you.
Well, that's not true. So what's happened is, there's pornographic books that are in the schools, and we've empowered parents to object to that and to have it removed because it's just not right that that's happening. And I've seen the books, and no one will defend the books. And when you show them publicly, media will cut it off because it's too graphic. But what's happened is there's activists out there that will say, "Oh my gosh, the U.S. Constitution, we got to take it off." So they're doing that to try to create a reaction. For example, someone said that they had to take off To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh, the state is doing that, which is not true. Not only is it not true, that's on our Department of Education summer reading list. So a lot of the stuff you hear is media narrative. We basically say it's got to be age and developmentally appropriate. all the things that have actually been identified, nobody will defend. And it's a difference between education and indoctrination. And so there'll be sometimes they'll say, oh, I got to take all the books off the shelf. I got to do this. They're making me do it. Because they know the media will just run with it and try to create a narrative. In fact, there was a school in Miami-Dade County. There was this book of poems from, I guess, a lady that did a poem at Biden's inauguration. And the school decided to move it from elementary library to middle school library. And that was it. And the media said that this was somehow they were banning these poems. And it's like this had nothing to do with the state. So I would just say anything on that is a hoax. Our standards are very clear. They are not controversial at all. And when you hear things like, we don't do critical race theory in the curriculum, for example, teaching, giving people up on race, it's wrong. But then they'll try to say, well, oh, you don't want to teach about racial discrimination. No, that's required to be taught in Florida, and it's all there on our State Department of Education website. So we've done it right. We are focusing on educating kids. We're not going to allow the schools to be an instrument of indoctrinating kids, and particularly with the sexual curriculum that most parents do not want their young kids to be given. That's something that we're providing good protection for parents on. So we're doing it right, and I think that's what you should do.
Governor, I just want to add to that. We had a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee on this very topic, and they were trying to exploit the, false claims against the governor in Florida. So I had the material sitting at the dais. I'm sitting in the United States House Judiciary Committee room, and I've got the book in question. There's no ban of books like Rosa Parks and others they were all claiming. That was all false. There was books about Rosa Parks in every elementary school throughout all of the districts in Florida, and that was all there. That was all false. But we did have a book sitting in front of us. I couldn't turn it to the camera. I literally couldn't turn the book around to the camera for fear that on C-SPAN, a child would see what was in the book. I don't want that in the elementary schools. That's not a book ban. That's a pornography ban. That is protecting parents and children, and that's what the state of Florida did.
Yeah, not only that, that brings up another thing. When Chip brought up, they will say, oh, they're not allowing this Rosa Parks book. So then you go into the library, and there are 12 Rosa Parks books. They just didn't happen to order this other one, and they try to say you're banning it. No, people have to make decisions. And that's the thing. With a curriculum, you're making judgments about what should be in or what should not be in. And if somebody's doing something that's pornographic in 3rd grade, taking that book out and saying that's a bad choice, as adults, you guys can still have access to that. It's not banned at all. In fact, you want adult material? Go look at Hunter Biden's laptop for all I care. But just don't bring it to our elementary schools.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you.
Israel, former employee of Biden administration, back Israel, and what do you think of the way Netanyahu?
So the question's about Israel and will I back Israel? Yes, I will back Israel. They're a strong ally. They're a friend, and you can count on me. And people talk about money, this, that, and the other thing. What they need more than anything is the U.S. president and government to just stand behind their right to defend themselves. Don't try to undercut them behind the scenes. Don't try to kneecap them publicly. Just say, recognize what they're dealing with. They have a terrorist group on their border that wants a second Holocaust. They want the destruction of Israel entirely. And so that is not a threat you can just turn a blind eye to. That's a threat that you have to eliminate. So they have every right to do that. Obviously, it's their fight. It's not going to be something we're going to have troops involved in. But we're going to support them to the hilt. And I've been able to go. Over there a number of times. Probably half a dozen times. And there's great history there. We would not be here as America without the history from the Judeo-Christian tradition that really informed all of Western civilization. And so they're not only a good ally, our only good ally in the Middle East, a reliable ally, but they're caretakers of a very special piece of real estate. And these kids on these college campuses protesting in favor of Hamas, and, that's just disgraceful. And a lot of them, MIT, they said, they're foreign students, most of them. Let me tell you this. You don't have a right as a foreign student to come here and study. That is a privilege. And honestly, I wish more Americans were taking those slots, but put that aside. But when I'm president, if a foreign student is here on a visa making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling their visa and I'm sending them home. The other thing is a lot of these students, I mean, some of them I think, they may just have really bad worldview. But I think a lot of it's just ignorance. It's like this is kind of the new cause, the new current thing, to go out there and talk about, free Palestine from the river to the sea. They don't even know what river and what sea they're talking about. And they also don't understand that when you're saying that, you're advocating for the destruction of Israel. But here's the thing. What they will say on college campuses, oh, Israel's a colonial power, all this other stuff. Guys, you look at like Judea and Samaria, you could go back thousands and thousands of years. Who was on those lands? Jews are on those lands. They have thousands of years of connection to those lands. And they got pushed out over the years. But how come that doesn't matter? So they're not the colonial power. They were the original people on those lands from the beginning of really recorded history, pretty close to that. And so the Arabs in 48, there was a partition, Jewish state and Arab state. Israel accepted, Arabs rejected it. They went to war. Israel won the war. Then in 67, they were going to go to war again. Israel preempted it. Then in 73, on Yom Kippur, they went to war against Israel. Israel won. All these waves of terror attacks, the intifadas over how many years, Israel stood firm. So you had a chance to have a Palestinian Arab state, and you rejected it. You've gone to war multiple times and lost. So how is it that Israel is somehow occupying? It's not occupied territory, it's disputed territory, and Israel has the strongest claim of right of anyone on it. So when I see these college kids acting like that this is like some type of colonial power, it shows they do not have a strong grasp of history, and they're not being told the actual facts. So I think it's a great relationship. I'll be a great friend. I know Bibi personally. I've gotten to know a lot of people over there. And so you can count on me on that one. Yes?
How would you deter Putin from keeping his campaign?
Well, so how do you deter Russia? And I would say this would apply to other countries like China. You got to be, so I believe in speak softly but carry a big stick. I believe we need to have a strong defense, not for the purpose of trying to instigate conflicts. Nikki Haley said she doesn't think we should have a Department of Defense. It should be a Department of Offense. And I'm just thinking, like, really? You're just going to go instigate wars, instigate conflicts? How is that? That is not the American tradition. Our founding fathers said the best way to avoid war is to prepare for it. We want to be strong so that people don't mess with us. But we don't want to be injecting ourselves into conflicts unnecessarily. So that's her and I have a difference of opinion on that. But you be very clear. Trump did much better than Biden on this. You lay down the marker and you say, here's what we're going to do. So for me, that marker is the NATO countries. Those are our folks. We will let them know, and trust me, they are not going to mess with that because they're not going to be able to get away with it. Biden has invited conflict with weakness. Biden invited conflict with his Afghanistan withdrawal, which was a disaster. And oh, by the way, to this day, not a single member of the military, civilian or uniform, has been held accountable for what happened in Afghanistan. When you don't have accountability, you are not going to get good results. I'm going to hold people accountable. That's your job as President of the United States. And so I wouldn't have done that withdrawal that way, because obviously you're leaving behind billions of dollars of vehicles and weapons to a hostile force. You have 13 service members killed with the ineptitude. So it's a total disaster. But if that had happened, I would have fired the people responsible for it. You can't just sit there and accept these terrible outcomes and no one's ever held accountable. So we're going to have a new regime. We're going to clear the military out of all the social agenda, all the woke ideology. It'll be mission first. I'm the only veteran running for president. I'm the only I'll be the first president since '88 to serve in a foreign conflict. And it's important to me that we're able to recruit people into the military in adequate numbers, and we are not doing that right now. It's the lowest recruitment since Vietnam ended. And why? Because when you join the military, you're writing a check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including your life. You don't know where they're going to send you. You don't know what contingencies are going to happen. And people are willing to do that because they love this country, and they're willing to do that because they want to serve something bigger than themselves. But they want to have confidence that the people in charge in both the military hierarchy and the civilian leadership are going to put the mission first, and that they're not going to sacrifice readiness or sacrifice the mission on the altar of political correctness or woke ideology. So I'll make that clear day one. We'll rip out all the nonsense. And then as president, I'll be somebody that will use the bully pulpit to talk to young people about the importance and the value of serving in the military. You know, Jack Kennedy said that you can look back on your life with a great deal of pride saying, I served in the United States Navy. And people saw that, and he had been a veteran of the Navy, and it's like, yeah, this is something that would be good to do. President Reagan used to say that people spend a lifetime wondering whether they ever made a difference. U.S. Marines don't have that problem. And people look and they say, yeah, you know, this is something good. So people want to do something bigger than themselves. They want to support a higher calling, but they need to be convinced that that mission is going to come first. And with me as president, it will come first. We will be a strong country. The bad guys will be on retreat, not because we're out there trying to get involved in conflict, but because it's going to be very clear. If you're friends with us, you're going to have a great friend. If you're hostile to us, don't mess with us because you'll regret that you ever did that.
Several years ago, we dealt with COVID. And then we find out that America is funding the Wuhan lab. And nobody seems to give a crap about this.
I do.
And I'm just wondering, this is a biological weapon. We now have a vaccine that we're finding out causes problems. Nobody's talking about this, and I'm wondering, who's accountable? Why are we funding a Wuhan lab? The United States, this is insane.
So I'm the only one running that's going to bring accountability to all these issues stemming from COVID. The fact of the matter is, it was under the Trump administration that they revoked the ban on gain-of-function research. It had been banned, and they revoked it under Trump. That was a mistake. Fauci, they directed money through the EcoHealth Alliance to Wuhan Institute of Virology to fund gain-of-function research. That's your tax dollars going to Wuhan. That is unacceptable. When the virus came, when we first found out about the virus, if you said that the virus came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, you were called a conspiracy theorist, you got censored on social media. People like Fauci were covering that up, trying to say that it was the wet market. Why? Because they knew that the U.S. government had been involved with this lab, and tax dollars had gone there. But we know it came from the lab. We know that is the truth. So they lied to us about that. They lied to us about all the issues with lockdown policies. They lied to us about the COVID shots. Remember, they said if you take a COVID shot, you will not get COVID? How true was that? Not at all. Now, every booster you take, you're more likely to get COVID as a result of it. And they would never talk about any type of side effects. I mean, think about this. Any pharmaceutical that is put on the market when they run these commercials, it's like the first 30 seconds of a commercial, it's like usually like a married couple, probably like 60 to 65, just walking on the beach or wherever, laughing, having fun because of this miracle drug, right? And then the next 30 seconds is like, you could die, heart attack, this, stroke. Oh, and they list all the possible side effects because they're covering their rear end. But yet when the mRNA shots came out, they said with a very short lead time, oh yeah, you know, no problem, you can't have any questions. And that's just not the way these things go. So you ended up seeing an increase in myocarditis, particularly amongst young men. And you saw different things that happened that were tied to people that had very low risk of complications from COVID to begin with. And yet people were losing their jobs in some, not in Florida, they didn't, but in other states. So you can't go into a bar or a movie theater unless you show proof of COVID shots. So this was the biggest intrusion on our liberties in the modern history of this country, and not a single person has been held responsible for it. Not a single person has apologized for it. January 20th, 2025, there will be a new sheriff in town, and we will deliver a reckoning on it.
I'll just add one thing, and I know the governor agrees, which is just yesterday, the United States Senate voted to have a continuing resolution, that is just to keep spending at Nancy Pelosi's spending levels, the ones we all fought last year, right? The omnibus, that great big spending bill. Only 13 Republicans voted against it. 13. That's the problem with Washington. You need somebody who will change that direction. Because you know what that bill funds? It funds the Wuhan Institute. You know what else it funds? It funds the Department of Justice that went after Mark Houck for standing in front of a pro-life clinic in Philadelphia. You know what else it funds? It funds the World Health Organization. You know what else it funds? It funds the United Nations to have dollars flow to Hamas. We've got to stop that. You got to have a leader who will go to Washington to stop that. And I'll close by saying, Thomas points this out. Remember when former President Trump used to complain, well, we're not getting the wall built because Congress won't help me fund it. He signed 12 continuing resolutions continuing to fund the government that wouldn't change it and allow him to finish building the wall. You need leadership to change that. Governor DeSantis would change that.
Great. And what do you do specifically in healthcare?
I'm a nurse practitioner.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. Yeah, my mom was a nurse for over 40 years, critical care. So I know a lot of, we need more nurses. I mean, that is one issue with healthcare. We've done an initiative in Florida to train up more options. When COVID hit, they had this traveling nurses became a hot commodity. They were making a killing. You could literally stay in your hospital, but just be a private contractor and double your salary. But facilitating more options for that, I do think is important because we don't have enough. So here's what we need in healthcare. It needs to be affordable, accessible, and accountable. Right now, all of healthcare is driven by big pharma, big insurance, big hospitals, and big government. And it's about moving money between those entities. And the patient is really at the back of the bus. The physician, in many ways, is at the back of the bus. It used to be, private practice was very viable for a lot of physicians. Now, a lot of them are employees of hospital chains. And some of them may like that, but I do think that the way healthcare has become more bureaucratic, you are going to have less and less people that are going to want to go and do the backbreaking work to become physicians. They go to private equity, they go to these others. So we need to make it so that those big entities are not dominating. And I've actually done this in Florida. So we've done two things to reduce cost. One is pharmacy benefit managers. We drop the hammer on them. They're middlemen that basically drive up the cost for consumers and for family-owned pharmacies. And they make a killing on it, but they're not adding any value to you or the overall system. So we did that. That was a big win. The other thing is we took on big pharma. I was trying to figure out how do I lower drug costs as a governor, because this is all basically federal, right? I found a provision of law in 2003 that had never been used where you can apply through HHS to purchase drugs from Canada. Now, the drugs in Canada are the same drug, but they're 25 cents on the dollar. So I went through years of wrangling, and finally, earlier this month, we won. And so now we're going to be able to do that. I'll save $100 to $200 million a year just for the state of Florida. But the pharmaceutical costs are high here and lower everywhere else because you all are subsidizing drugs in Europe and Canada and all these other places. And I think that there needs to be some equal pricing here. So you're going to have to use leverage to be able to do it. And then Chip will probably want to talk about some of the insurance stuff because I think there's a lot that needs to be done. One of the things we did in Florida is nobody knows how much anything costs in healthcare. If someone says you need a hip replacement, you have no idea what that means. Whereas if somebody said, oh, you know what, you need to go get a new car, you'd have a sense of what you're dealing with financially, right? So we said you got to publish your prices. So we have price transparency. If you live in Orlando, you can type in hip replacement and you can see what the options are. The problem with that is that's not enough if it's third party paying for everything. So we created insurance policies for our state workers. If you choose something cheaper, then you get a rebate on your premiums. So consumers now, it's beneficial for them to find something that's more cost effective. So now these providers have to compete on the margins there, and that creates a downward pressure. But it's only because the consumer benefits with lower prices or lower premiums. If the consumer is not benefiting, then having the prices isn't going to matter if it's all third-party payer.
The governor's exactly right, ma'am, and thank you for all of your service and working in healthcare. I'm a cancer survivor. 12 years ago, I had stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. My daughter was less than 4 months old. My son was 2 years old. And I got through that through my wonderful supportive wife, the good Lord, and MD Anderson, a great hospital in Texas. I have a constituent who has stage the best cancer hospital in the world, and is 3 hours from her house. And she can't go there. That's not health care. That's not what we should be giving for our country. Like, we used to be able to go to the best doctors, and you'd be able to pay for it. And we've got to break that. We've got to let you know, we know how to do it. But Republicans curl up in the corner and they go, oh my God, they're going to yell at me because they're going to say pre-existing condition. We are all walking pre-existing conditions because we're human beings. We've got to make it affordable by driving prices down. We've got legislation to do that. Give the tax breaks to you. Give the money and the power to you, not the corporations, not the insurance companies, who, you know how much money they made over the last decade? They have just raked in money under Obamacare, and basically 90% of the revenue is coming in from government contracts. We got to change that. We got to empower patients and doctors. I know that's what Governor DeSantis would do as president, and what we need to do for you.
And yeah, let me just add one quick thing. This was the promise that you were made when if Trump became president and we were in Congress, if we controlled the House, the Senate, and Trump was president. That was the first thing he was going to do. It did not get done. He spent the first week of his presidency arguing about the size of the crowd on the mall at his inauguration.
It's true.
We should have been working on this. Frankly, I'm disappointed in Paul Ryan. The weak, tepid repeal of Obamacare. You know, they said we were going to pull it out root and branch. They wanted to prune and replant Obamacare, frankly. And so that is one of the failings where, you know, you should hold somebody accountable for that, okay? Don't re-elect your congressman if they had any part in that, and don't re-elect the president who failed you on that.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, if you look with Donald Trump, he promised that he would repeal Obamacare, didn't do it. He said he would eliminate the national debt. Not only did not do that, he added $7.8 trillion. He said that he was going to hold Hillary accountable, let her off the hook. He said he was going to build the wall, have Mexico pay for it. Obviously, that didn't happen because we wouldn't have 8 million illegals coming in under Biden. If that was the case. Then he said he was going to drain the swamp. Swamp got worse while he was there. So if he wasn't able to do that in the first 4, and again, I've said, you know, I don't know that he could get elected in this country, but let's just say I'm wrong about that. What are the odds that he would actually be able to do it in the next 4 as a lame duck president that's going to be focused on all these issues pertaining to himself personally and is going to be very distracted? I just don't see how you could possibly get that done. Whereas with me, I have a record of delivering on all my promises. I'll be focused, I'll be disciplined. You know, we have this massive bureaucracy. It's an administrative state. It's a 4th branch of government at this point. It was not what the Founding Fathers ever intended, but it exercises power over us without our consent. You can win an election for President of the United States. These bureaucrats just do what they want anyways, regardless of what you, the American people, say. That is intolerable if we're supposed to govern ourselves. So I'm going to rein that in. We're going to bring in the administrative state and put it back under constitutional accountability. That doesn't happen by just snapping your fingers. You need a methodical, strong, disciplined executive to be able to do that. You know, the Trump, his kind of, the way he would run things, very chaotic. Be one thing after another, kind of just go. There was not a lot of method. We will do that. When I set my mind to something, we get it done. But that's going to require a lot of fortitude to be it, because these people are not going to give up their power willingly. They've accumulated it over many, many decades. My job is to reconstitutionalize this government and return it to its rightful owners, which is we, the American people. Yep. Yeah. Great, energy. So he doesn't want us to be dependent on foreign sources of energy. Neither do I. We're not going to go hat in hand to Saudi Arabia or to Venezuela. We'll be energy dominant, energy independent, and that will weaken China, Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Yes, we're going to open up for domestic production of oil and gas. I support nuclear. You actually have the ability to do this in very small footprints now. It's very manageable, it's safe, it's very clean. Some reason there's been a stigma about this, but the people that are talking about global warming, they oppose nuclear even though it has zero carbon emissions. But our U.S. Navy aircraft carriers are run off nuclear power. This is something that's commonplace. So I think doing that will be good. No band-aids on things like solar and wind. Like in Florida, we have solar, but it's not mandated. It's market-based. But when a hurricane comes and people's power gets knocked out, I got to get those lights back on. I need reliable energy. I need the fossil fuels because that's 100% reliable. So it's going to be all of the above. But I do think it's a national security issue, and that's why I think on that basis I'll be able to accelerate permitting things and getting these things really moving so it doesn't take 6 years just to be able to do. We need more refineries in this country. We need to open up federal lands. We're going to do all of that. I want to lower your gas prices. I want to lower energy costs. I want to bring in the natural gas from the Marcellus Shale into New England here. Why should you guys be importing natural gas from other countries?
Governor, this will be our last question.
Great. And your name is? Paula. Paula asks about handling the massive numbers of illegal aliens that have come, particularly under Biden. You have to deport them. There's no way you can have a country unless you have a sanction for people coming illegally. And right now, people come... I can actually, what we did in Florida shows the principle. We're a maritime state. Media says, oh, you're not a border state. I'm a maritime state. We have boats that try to come in illegally from Cuba or Haiti or other islands. And the Coast Guard is there to stop. There aren't enough Coast Guard boats. So when we started to see boats coming in, a lot of them landing in the Keys and in South Florida, I scrambled Florida maritime assets. I filled in the gaps. Boat comes from the Haitians of the Coast Guard, they would bring them back to Haiti. Well, guess what happened when people figured out that was what was the likely consequence? The number of boats declined dramatically. Why? Why would you want to get in a boat, go over very choppy waters, when you know the result is going to be you're going to end up right where you started? Same principle applies at the border. Are you going to want to pay a coyote thousands of dollars to bring you in through the border knowing that the consequence is you're going to end up right back where you came from? No. So you will see less people coming to begin with, and we're going to build a wall, do all that. But that has got to be the consequence. And here's the thing with Biden. There was the thing, they showed the clip of Haley kind of reprimanding conservatives for saying that it's wrong to say people that are coming to the country illegally are committing crimes, that they're criminals. And she said that's disrespectful, that their family's looking for a better life. I can tell you this, if you look at what's coming across the border now, it's overwhelmingly military-aged males from all around the world. Now, our enemies, seeing that vulnerability, do you not think that they've sent people to come into this country? We know people have come from China and Iran, other places in the Middle East. I sent people to help Texas way back in 2021 as soon as the problem started. I went out to visit our Florida folks on the border. I saw people from Haiti coming across the border, Libya, all these places. This has been crazy that they've allowed this to happen. We have vulnerabilities. I mean, I would say that it was one of the top 2 national security threats we face at this point, our own border and China. And there will be a terrorist attack. I hate to say, I wish I was wrong, but what are the odds that out of 8 million we have not had terrorists come through? And there's going to end up being an attack that people will trace back to somebody that came across the border. We already know there's a lot of criminal aliens coming across. We already know that people that come across and then go on to commit criminal offenses against Americans, those are all avoidable crimes if we just had the security of our own country. Now you're starting to see more and more people get upset about it because a massive number of people are going to communities all across the country. Manhattan, they were always saying how they're a sanctuary city, that New York City is a sanctuary city. Well, you've had a lot of people bust in there from Texas. Now all of a sudden they're singing a different tune because you can't run a country like this. It doesn't work. And think about this. We have young people that are struggling to afford housing. Rents have gone up. Homes are more expensive. Interest rates are high. We need way more home construction, single family and multifamily. Well, how is it? Is it good for that problem to have to house another 8 million people illegally? Of course not. So this is bad for the American people. And when I see people like putting the illegals in the hotels by Foxborough and the veterans can't get a place for the Army-Navy game, when I see New York City closing a school, sending the kids home and housing the illegals in the school, that is a disgrace. That is putting the American people last. Well, the days of Americans being placed last are going to come to an end at high noon on January 20th, 2025. God bless you guys. Thank you.